You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. By going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can make this possible.
All right, folks, welcome back to National Harbor, MGM. We're, of course, here for the Leaders and Legends Awards Gala. So I'm going to be talking with some folks here just a moment. But earlier this week, we talked about a new poll out showing that Donald Trump is polling 2% among black people. Remember, he thanked black folks for not voting in the last election. And so what does it mean? Can he actually get even higher than that? It was interesting seeing that poll, seeing those poll numbers. He's always touting black unemployment, always saying how much he's done for the blacks. But the question is, will black folks say yes to Donald Trump? RC, you and Candace Owens and a few of the black folks, y'all are having a black summit this week. MAGA supporters for backing Trump. Do you actually think Donald Trump has a shot at getting black votes?
I'll start out by saying that I'm very dismissive of this poll and how credible or legitimate it is. You saw from 2016 and even from 2018 that polling continues to be not a legitimate way to kind of analyze elections. Now, beyond that, I do think that the RNC needs to do a better job reaching out to the black community, because I think they have a message that should resonate in their community, which is, look, you guys want school choice. I'm sure you're not supporting these full-term abortions, and also the economy is doing well. And I think that's a message that will resonate with black families if they can get their butts to those neighborhoods to do black outreach.
But you're talking about the RNC, Greg, we hear RC talk about the RNC and black outreach. It ain't like Donald Trump has actually done black outreach. And again, you can talk about the unemployment rate. I got you. But we also know when that actually started to come down, what we also know is that, in fact, I'm here at the Capital Region of the National Minority Supplier Development Council, Greg. And in the last 2.5 years, Donald Trump has been trying to eliminate the National Minority Supplier Development Council from his budget.
Of course. Well, I mean, let's be fair to the President of the United States. He's an equal opportunity shifter and stiffer. I mean, as a businessman, he doesn't pay anybody. But that having been said, here's several things that we should just set aside and get rid of at the beginning. Number one is, we're not going to debate whether Donald Trump is a racist or not. All we have to do is, as they would say in the old commercial, roll that beautiful bean footage of all the things he said. So we can set that aside. When we look at him in terms of his policies, you're absolutely right. He doesn't just support minority business. He doesn't support business, period. This trade war with China, this foolishness with Wilbur Ross at the Department of Commerce, the way he's crushing. We heard Mustafa walk through what he's doing to the farmers. So we can kind of set that aside. But let's look very specifically, finally, at race and when it comes to black and brown people and policy. When Donald Trump has been running around these last few days, coming unglued and finally getting his strategy of throwing everything against the wall to see what it will stick with this whole notion of foreign interference, one of the things he said day before yesterday was, look at them, they're attacking us because look at our judges. Pause. You've been making this point over and over again. Any black person that would vote for Donald Trump at this point is probably beyond convincing, because they don't understand that it is the appointment, the replacement of the federal bench, that's the single most important thing that's going to impact black lives for the next 2 generations. So anybody black voting for Donald Trump now, when it comes back around and these district court judges and these courts of appeal judges and these Supreme Court judges tear this country apart with a theocratic view of the United States Constitution, those very same American Negroes are going to have nothing to say. You can put that down in black letter, brother. Nothing to say.
If I can.
It's very interesting. Hold on 1 second, RC. Hold on. RC, I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah, please, let him talk. I want to hear this.
But Mustafa, I got to ask you this here. When I look at the judges, nearly 90% of the judges that Donald Trump has appointed are white men.
Come on.
Very few African Americans. First, when you look at Department of Housing, Health and Human Services, HUD, and Department of Education, the rollback of civil rights protections. In the Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, continued by Bill Barr, want to roll back consent decrees, increase the use of private federal prisons. And so we could go on. And so I'm just saying, it's interesting. So if there are 2 things Donald Trump has done supposedly as good for black folks, I can count about 8 or 10 things. That's a ledger doesn't look too great. Your thoughts on this poll and what RC had to say?
As I've shared before, this is a very apartheid system that has been put in place. And I don't use that in a very flippant way. I mean, you can literally look at the pieces that have been put in place. We'll stop there. Look at the positions that have been filled inside of the 17 agencies and departments that I work with in the past. You very rarely see a person of color in an influential position. Ben Carson has an influential position, but then we go a step further and we look at the rollbacks that have been happening around housing, around affordable housing. So we know that disproportionately a number of our people live in that space. And yes, we want to get folks into home ownership. That is an important part of the process. But there have been, unfortunately, moves in the negative direction in that space. If we look at medically underserved areas, we also have seen a rolling back. The president, when he pushes his budgets through, he's telling you exactly where he is placing his priorities. In civil rights, in the Department of Justice, a number of the programs that were there in the past to help people to not get caught up in the system, to help them to be able to move forward, unfortunately, have, fallen to the wayside. So I don't have to get into, some of the things that the president says, although they are egregious. Let's look at a person's works. Let's look at the policies that they're putting forward. Let's look at the budgets that you're putting forward and see if these folks are actually a priority. And as John Conyers used to say when I worked for him, you'll know everything you need to know based upon where people are putting their money.
RC, go ahead.
If I can just quickly rebut the fact that Donald Trump's policies has not been policies that favor African Americans, we can start with the Department of Justice, which you mentioned.
Yep.
President Trump was the one that passed the largest rewrite in Department of Justice history in order to pass criminal justice reform. That we know disproportionately helps the African American community. And just beyond that,
I'm sorry, you called it the largest what? Hold on one second. No. Hold on. I just want to clarify. You called it the largest what?
Rewrite of a criminal justice framework and a federal framework, and that's what Donald Trump's First Step Act was. Now, just getting beyond that,
the largest?
Yes.
Don't
Yes.
let them keep talking, bro.
It was. You
Okay, go ahead.
You find a larger single substantial shift in federal criminal justice policy. You won't find one bigger than the First Step Act.
Okay, go ahead.
What about them judges, bro?
Going beyond that,
About them judges,
we're
brother.
talking about housing programs like affordable housing. These are some of the worst housing that you can offer to a person. You might as well make someone homeless at this point. So what Donald Trump is doing is he's transitioning.
Whoa, hell no.
Let me continue. He's transitioning
There's a
to
difference between
zones.
being homeless and a public housing. Are you crazy?
He's put billions of dollars into federal opportunity zones. So he's trying to come up with a dynamic framework to increase the quality of life of the individuals who are living in quote-unquote low-income areas. So you may say, so I know we think different ways. My thinking is any program that was a developmental program to help the black community that's existed for the past 10 years, I say cut it, because I say that's a program that has failed us, literally failed us. So I say cut all these terrible programs,
go ahead, Greg.
something innovative, and that's what Donald Trump's doing. And
I mean,
that's the message that
look,
resonates.
I don't have any problem with what you're saying, RC. There's a brand new book out on Clarence Thomas. It's a white law professor who is reading Clarence Thomas as a black nationalist. And that's something that black legal scholars have been saying for 20 years. Not a black nationalist in the sense that we think about black nationalism traditionally. This very rugged individualism, pro-Second Amendment, to the point where Clarence Thomas would argue in his opinions in many ways that the Second Amendment was the biggest gift that the Civil War amendments allowed black people to have. And so I get that. So I don't have really much a problem with that. My challenge is with the fact that these doctrinaire black conservatives don't seem to have enough of a command of American history to understand that nothing in this country's history is theoretical. In other words, what we're dealing with is a white nativist nationalist who doesn't even enact the policies that we just heard RC talking about. So if you're saying withdraw the subsidies from everyone, we can disagree or agree on that, but here's what Trump is not doing. Here's what Republicans are not doing. They are not withdrawing the subsidies for everyone. The subsidies for billionaires and the tax cut is enough evidence. But we can set all that aside for a second. Like Mustafa said, you can go through it, and you said you can go through chapter and verse all these policies. I got one question for RC and Candace Owens and anybody else. Defend the judges, brother.
Defend the judges?
Yeah, defend these judicial selections, including the stolen Supreme Court seat that Neil Gorsuch has, including the appointment of Brett Kavanaugh, who has credible sexual assault. No. Defend the judges, brother.
Okay.
Defend them. Defend them.
Fingers crossed, the way things are looking, President Trump should be able to put 2 more judges on the court, which will swing the court.
And then what?
Which will swing the court into a heavy conservative.
Right.
You guys have to look. All these major.
Who are you guys?
All these major. You guys, as in like you guys that are brainwashed by the black liberal establishment.
No, I said judges, brother. If you can't do it, just say look at the camera.
I know you read a lot of Frank Wilderson, and you're probably a black pessimist, but there are people.
This is a man arguing with himself on television.
There are people who are black optimists, and my thinking is that the history of civil rights expansions that African Americans have been able to reap the benefits of, they've been passed by conservative judges.
Wait a minute.
You guys are constructing this threat as if Brett Kavanaugh.
I'm not arguing with you, brother. I just need you to give me the example.
And this is what the Democrat Party has done successfully. They've put people in front of cameras who will lie straight face to the camera and tell black people, these conservatives are coming, they're going to take your rights, they're going to take your rights to vote, they're going to
arguing with
take your
himself.
abortion.
He hasn't given one example. Is this the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Is it the Voting Rights Act? Is it the Fair Housing Act of 1968 that these judges are going to eviscerate?
So you're telling me in 1965 when these judges...
No, I asked you a question.
1965
I'm not. I asked you a question.
Were these conservatives? Were these who?
I asked you a question, bro.
Or were these woke ivory tower?
No, are you saying?
So here,
you have to recognize that conservatives who are on the court have no reason to vote against or vote down anything.
Here is what I know, gentlemen. Here's what I know.
He's a man arguing with himself.
Here is what I know. This is what I know. Very simple. Numerous Republican judges appointed by Trump would not even affirm before the Senate committee that Brown versus Board of Education was appropriately decided.
Exactly.
That's what we know, RC.
Defend the
you
judges.
can deny it, but we have it on record. It's not true. RC, here's the deal.
They did not.
I'm just going to give you some advice, RC. RC, they would not answer the question.
It was not.
They would not answer here. They would not answer the question. It was specifically asked.
Oh, now
here is the fundamental deal.
With a JD
Okay,
that's
all
not
right, y'all.
legal question.
Here's the piece.
Sorry,
that's all nonsense. We'll see what happens, but I'm still waiting to see Trump's so-called black plan because it don't exist. All right, y'all.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, you heard me talk a lot about marijuanastock.org. Why? Because we want to keep you informed of investment opportunities that make sense. We've all watched the growth of the cannabis industry. It is now a $340 billion a year market, and it is still growing. It's also being legalized state by state in this country, and things are changing dramatically. Now, of course, marijuana has a good cousin called hemp with a much higher concentration of CBD, which means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Until recently, hemp farming was illegal in the United States, practically legal in the U.S., but the 2018 Farm Bill changed all of that. Those who want to grow need land. This is real simple. It's incredible investment opportunities for companies like 420 Real Estate. Their business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords. Now, of course, at 420 Real Estate, they've done something special for Roland Martin Unfiltered family. The original investment was $500, but you can invest as little as $200 in this crowdfunding campaign. You can invest from $200 up to $10,000. All you got to do is go to marijuanastock.org. For more information, go to marijuanastock.org to get in the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.